Hello and welcome to episode number 301 of Just Jets. What's going on? Today we're going to answer some of your voicemails, as we always do. And in our first topic of the day, I want to talk about the great trade-up debate right now amongst Jet fans. A little bit late on this. If you are a big YouTube watcher, you may have seen my appearance on the Jake Asman show. Last week we discussed this, but I got a lot of calls for the pod this week about quarterbacks, which is expected, right? No one really thought the Jets would be able to beat the Baltimore Ravens. So there's not as much discourse coming out of this Ravens game. So, you know, it's a lot more of a focus on looking ahead. So I thought this was an appropriate time to bring up the conversation here, as I didn't get into the conversation deeply in or on my own channel yet at this point. So I thought, what better episode to do this than have a very quarterback-centric podcast this week. So where does this come from? It really began with Matt Miller of ESPN, a draft analyst, where he released a mock draft that had the New York Jets trading up with the Tennessee Titans. At the time, the Jets had the number 5 pick, and the Tennessee Titans had the number 1 pick. Tennessee still has the number 1 pick. The Jets, I believe, though, have moved up and have the 4th pick in the draft. So in Matt Miller's mock, he traded, from the Jets, they swapped first-round picks, so they jump up from 4 or 5 all the way up to number 1. They throw in their additional first-round pick from this year and a second-round pick in the 2027 draft. So if you remember, in 26 and 27, the Jets have 8 first and second-round picks over the next 2 years. How that's laid out is 2 firsts this year, 2 seconds this year. That's your 4. 3 first-round picks in 2027 and a second-round pick in 2027. So with this move, that means the Jets would have 1 first-round pick this year, 2 second-round picks this year, 3 first-round picks in 2027, and no second-round picks in 2027. Honestly, I think that is a pretty fair trade to jump up a handful of spots and then have your selection at whichever quarterback is your preference with the number 1 pick. I think when you get into trading additional first-round picks beyond this year is when I start to get that uneasy feeling. And why I like this trade, if this is something that would actually be available to the Jets, is because with those 3 first-round picks that you have in 2027, yes, you don't have a second-rounder, but if you trade down from one of your 3 first-round picks, you should be able to get enough back to essentially recoup the value that you gave up to go up and get your quarterback from, you know, the previous year's draft. Whereas if it was, for instance, Connor Rogers, who's another draft analyst, you might know him from Badlands or SNY, but also does a ton of draft content for NBC and the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. He was thinking the cost to get up to number 1 would be a first this year and a first next year. I think that changes things a little bit. And now I get it. You would still have your 2 second rounders from this year, and you would have 2 first-round picks and a second-round pick for next year. Of the 2, my preference by far is the first option that I laid out. And I start to get a little bit of nerves with that other package where you're looking at the first rounders in both years. I think, you know, if your mindset is, I don't want to give up all that in a quarterback class that I have questions about, I get it. And I think that is a totally reasonable, you know, response to the New York Jets giving that up to move up for whichever quarterback, right? Whether it's Mendoza or Ty Simpson, whoever. I would lean towards not doing it for the multiple firsts, but for a first and second round pick in addition to the swap, right? So it would really be 2 first round picks from this year and the second round pick next year, but you're getting the first overall pick. So you move from 5 to 1, you throw in your additional first from this year, and then you lose your second round pick next year. But how I would attack the draft, I think that's the most important part, right? Like, so if this scenario is you're trading up to the number 1 pick, you take Fernando Mendoza, you still have 2 second round picks. I think you're looking at at the top of the second round, wide receiver, edge, could be linebacker, could be safety, could be interior offensive line, depending on what the Jets decide to do there. There's a lot of routes that the Jets could go, could be running back if they don't bring back Breece Hall. Again, there's a lot that they could do at this point. We don't know what free agency and the trade market holds before you actually get to April. So this year, in comparison to others, it's not as easy to kind of just hone in on a couple positions other than quarterback if you're trading up for that one. But then, as I mentioned, in 2027, while I'm going into the draft with a ton of ammo in the first round and then no second round picks, I'm just, you're probably using your two higher ones, and then in whatever is your lowest first round pick, either just sliding that back into the second round and getting additional capital, or you move back a few spots, and that might even be enough to get a second round pick in the process, right? Depending on how far you go back. It depends on if the Jets are getting Indy, whether it's the Indy pick, their own pick, or the Cowboys/Packers pick, that they got in the Quinnen deal. That really kind of leaves it up for grabs. But, a lot of this too is how confident you are in these quarterbacks. I lean Fernando Mendoza over Ty Simpson, but I'm not at the point where I am 100% it's Fernando Mendoza or nothing, or on the other side of the aisle where it's Ty Simpson 1000% or nothing. I think there's pros and cons to each one of those guys. And I feel good enough about either one of those prospects not to wait until 2027. But again, we don't know where the Jets are going to end up picking. If they're in a spot where they would have to give up a ton of assets to get up to the number 1 pick or number 2 pick to take one of those two guys, different story. If it's a first and a second, I would do it. If it's you can stick and pick, I would do it. If you're getting anything more than that, that's the scenario where you can start to talk me into waiting until 2027 for one of the quarterbacks. So I think it's going to be interesting, but I am open to the idea. I guess final summation here is I'm open to the idea about trading up. It really depends on what the cost is. So I'm not definitively saying that, yeah, you absolutely trade up no matter what. You trade your whole draft haul to get up there. I think if the price is right, you absolutely do it. And the price isn't zero. For some people, it is. Some people are not confident enough in either of those two guys, which is fine. You could have, whatever evaluation or whatever belief you want in either of those two guys, which is fine. I am confident enough with the first package that was laid out by Matt Miller. So let's get into your voicemails. We're going to do that in our next segment. But first, a word from our sponsor, which is Sleeper. Think you know football? Then try to turn your football knowledge into real money with the Sleeper app, the ultimate fantasy sports app that can turn game day into payday. Just download the Sleeper app and pick more or less on your favorite players. With more stats than any other daily fantasy app, just choose 2 or more of your favorite players from pregame or live. Pick more or less from their predicted stats, and you could win up to 1,000 times your money if your picks come through and hit. New offer. Free $20 no deposit required promo. Terms and conditions apply. All right, let's get into your questions this week, your voicemails. We start with friend of the show, Dano, wants to talk about a couple options at quarterback.
Greetings, handsome Matt.
What's up, Dano?
Dano from the Danger Zone, and got a question for you today. Mendoza at 101 or Dante Moore at 105, assuming cost and trade up and long-term upside and floor. You got to consider everything. Let's assume we're picking 5th in this scenario. So you would have to go get Mendoza, or you could stick and pick Moore. What say you? And hey, man. Keep killing it out there. I love your content, man. Catch you later.
Dano, the absolute best. Thank you so much for checking in. I personally am not convinced that Dante Moore is going to come out of school this year. If he does, I think that changes the conversation a little bit, right? I think it's, easier for a team to get a quarterback and not have to move up in the draft, which I guess kind of answers this question. If Dante Moore comes out of school and my options are like, Dante Moore, where we are right now at pick 4 or 5, or moving up for Fernando Mendoza, do I like Fernando Mendoza enough to give up the additional assets? And I think my answer would be no, which I don't know if that makes me hypocritical for saying that I am open to the idea of a trade up. I guess my point is this is a very different conversation if there's 2 versus 3 quarterbacks in this draft. Because I think the gap from Mendoza to Simpson and Moore is not big enough for me to go, you know what, I am willing to trade the additional picks to get up and take, the one of the 3. Now, if there's only 2, that's very different, because the likelihood of you picking at 5 and being able to just stick and pick a quarterback with a class that has just, 2 top guys makes it a little bit more challenging. So I think to answer how Dano laid it out, I would stick and pick at 105 and take Dante Moore. But if we're doing what do I think is going to actually happen, I don't think Dante Moore comes out of school this year. And it kind of makes it a moot point, right? Because that option I don't think would be available for you if it's only a quarterback class with the top 2 of Ty Simpson and Fernando Mendoza. I don't think either of those guys would make it to number 5. I think you would be getting trade, even if it's the Titans and the Giants, both teams who would not take a quarterback number 1 or number 2 overall. I think both teams would trade out because there's going to be a bunch of quarterback needy teams after that. I think you just got to hope that, Tyler Shuck plays well enough that the Saints aren't going to want to draft a quarterback, and Shedeur Sanders plays well enough that they're not going to want a quarterback, and maybe that makes life a little bit easier for you. Speaking of quarterbacks, a legend we haven't heard from in a while, it's Billy Bilstein.
Hello, Matt O'Leary.
Hello.
I am Billy Bilstein. You might not remember me because it's been a long time since I called.
How could we forget?
Luckily, Joe Tipman is still playing for the Jets. I heard a rumor that you were getting married and wanted to say Mazel Tov.
Thank you, Billy.
I wish you lots of mazel. I think that the Jets should consider drafting a quarterback in the 2026 draft. I was wondering what quarterbacks you like and would consider a good first-round pick. I would also like to know if you would consider a later round pick. Thank you, Matt O'Leary, your friend, Billy Bilstein from Boca.
Thank you, Billy. If I were to do my rankings right now, I would say that number 1 is Mendoza, number 2 is Simpson. I don't think that Dante Moore is coming out, but if he was, he would be 3rd. After that, I think there's a pretty decent sized drop off. There's some things about John Mateer's game that I like, but that he's also a candidate likely to go back to school. Lenora Sellers is likely to go back to school. There's not really, like, Garrett Nussmeier doesn't do it for me. Cade Klubnik doesn't do it for me. I have a really hard time with Drew Allar right now. With the injury, I just didn't see enough at the collegiate level to take a swing on him where I think he's going to go. Although, I mean, you make the case with Jordan Travis. He never took a snap for the Jets and was, what, a 5th round pick? So it is what it is, unfortunately, there. Look, I think it's going to come down to the top 2. I think if the Jets are taking a quarterback in this class, I would be pretty confident in betting that it would be one of Mendoza or Simpson. I don't think it's going to be, let's forego quarterback in the first round and then take one in like rounds, I don't know, 2 to 4. That would surprise me, honestly. Let's go to Scott out in Montana.
Hey, Matt. Scott here from Montana. First of all, I'm a little late to get this message out, but congratulations on your wedding this weekend.
Thank you.
Hope it's everything that you both wanted. As far as your day went, I hope it was perfect for you. And also congratulations on your 300th episode of Just Jets on a secondary note, too.
Thank you, man.
As far as today's game went, Matt, much closer game than the final score indicated. Really, the entire game came down to 2 plays. The failed 4th down in the 3rd quarter that gave Baltimore the short field, and then the Breece Hall fumble, which I just felt terrible for Breece Hall because he gave so much effort today, and that's one of the positives I want to take away is just how much effort the Jets played with today. They competed the whole way.
Yep.
Not a moral victory, but a lot of positives again to build on. Offensively, just a lot better rhythm. It was an offense that was much more enjoyable to watch, to see us move the ball, pick up some first downs. Special teams was consistent as always. And then the defense was solid. Our run defense, our secondary did fine. Harrison Phillips is a stud in defensive tackle. And then I heard today that he's playing hurt.
Yes.
That he's really hurt, actually, but he's a stud. That was a great pickup. 2 things I want to talk about, and maybe you could comment on them. First of all is our wide receiver room has went from a barren wasteland 2 months ago to now the Eagles and Colts, thank you for throwing in A.D. Mitchell and Mechie in those trades because those 2 are going to help us. And if we go out and draft another receiver high in the draft, like maybe even with our first pick, going into next year, Garrett, maybe a high pick at receiver, Mitchell, Mechie, Arian Smith, Williams, all of a sudden we have a pretty deep wide receiver room going into next year. And then the second thing I want to bring up is I haven't heard this person's name, and I just want to throw it out there and see what you think.
Okay.
But I would hate to see the Jets. If a quarterback falls to them and it's someone they want, great. I don't want to waste draft picks trading up to get a quarterback next year. What about Jameis Winston on just a 1-year deal until the following draft? I know he turns the ball over a ton, but he sure would be entertaining to watch throwing to all those receivers with that offensive line and Breece Hall in the backfield. Okay, Matt, thanks for all you do. Go Jets.
Yeah, I love the Jameis Winston call out that you made at the end. I honestly, if you watch from this past offseason, that was a name that I brought up as a stopgap option. I'd be open to it. I don't think he's going to cost you a whole lot. If you're going to go the cheap route and the, hey, like, let's just figure this out in 2027. I mean, like you said, it would be entertaining. You'd be able to evaluate the wide receiver, whichever one you take assuming you take one in the first round, right? Like if you're not going quarterback, then I think probably pretty safe bet to assume you're going to add a wide receiver, which another good point on you. John Mechie has overachieved or exceeded, I guess, better word, my expectation for him so far. Only 2 games, but he has a touchdown in both games. And is looking like he could be an answer at slot receiver going into next year. And A.D. Mitchell, I think at worst could be like a number 4 wide receiver for you. Add a first or top of the second round talent to that, and you go from one of the league's worst wide receiver rooms to a significantly improved unit. I think there's absolutely value in that. I think there absolutely is value in that. I would be open to that idea. on both fronts, right? Like if you decide package too steep, we're not going to trade up for a quarterback this year. We're picking 5 or 6. They're asking for, the moon and the stars to get up to number 1. And you're going to wait till 2027, then I don't think I can give you a much better answer than Jameis in the short term, especially on the free agent market, right? Like, are you trading for Mac Jones without Kyle Shanahan, or would you rather just sign Jameis Winston for $3 million to $5 million bucks? I think I'd take my chances with Jameis at that point. Liam from Staten Island, what do you got?
Hey, Matt, Liam from Staten Island here. Another just boring, who cares kind of loss. Just nothing to really write home about. I mean, the defense played surprisingly well to start in a lot of ways. I think the secondary was a lot better. The run defense was a good bit better, but I wasn't expecting them to win if you can only put up 10 points.
Fair.
A.D. Mitchell and the new guy, the Mechie. I think they both looked much better today than they did against New England, so that's good. Brees looked good before fumbling and pretty much costing the game, but still not great. And we got out punted. Their punter looked. I thought we had the best punter in the league. I stand corrected.
He was awesome.
My question for you this week, just because there's really nothing to talk about with this Jets team. They are what they are. We know what they are. I'm looking forward in the future. And so my worry is just based on how bad teams like Tennessee and the Saints and the Raiders look, I'm not too sure we're going to have a top 3 pick. We may not even have a top 5 pick, especially if we end up rattling off a win or two. So my question for you is, if we end up with, let's just say 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe any of those picks where we're not guaranteed to get Mendoza, we're not guaranteed to get any of the top 3 guys, would you say you're more interested in trading up, or are you more interested in, say, building out the roster a little bit more and going with quarterback next year and going for a guy like Kirk Cousins, Mac Jones, whoever you can get to run with next year? Where do you sort of lean towards if we end up in that position? If we end up with the 2nd pick, the 3rd, we might have a shot at a top-tier quarterback. But if we end up with 5th, 6th, 7th, I don't really think we do. So let me know what you think. I'm more in the stay where you're at, build out the roster, hell, even maybe trade back from the 5, 6, or 7. But let me know what you think and what you would do if you're Muji. And as always, go Jets.
Yeah, thanks for the call, Liam. And I think we've been talking through it a lot in this episode. I think if you could do it for the Matt Miller price, that's something that I'd be open to. Now, if you're picking 7, I don't know if that price is realistic. Hell, I don't even know if that price was really all that realistic for the number 5 pick, but you never know. I would be open to doing that. If it gets any steeper, I would say no and build out the roster. I don't want to trade down. And I'll explain why. And you might be saying, well, you trade down, you accumulate more picks, and this roster needs a lot of work. Don't you want more swings? And I hear that logic. What I would say to you is, if let's just use the example at pick 6, let's say, we could all pretty much guarantee that 2 quarterbacks are going to go in the 5 picks before the Jets. That would mean the Jets are going to get one of the best non-quarterbacks in this draft class. And whether that's Reese, the edge rusher, or maybe you're going with a wide receiver at that spot, I would want to come away with this draft with another blue chip prospect at a position of need, which I think edge is. I like Jermaine and I like Will McDonald a lot. I still think they need more at that position. And if you could pair Garrett Wilson with another 1B type of receiver, man, that would be a hell of an accomplishment for this Jets team. So I don't think I would trade back. And it all depends on how the board shakes out, right? I'm never going to say no. And you might get a Godfather offer you just can't refuse. But if we're assuming all things equal, probably not trading out of it. I would say that I would be more inclined to stick and pick. And honestly, I would say the guy that I would want to target probably the most in that range would be Jordan Tyson and pair him with Garrett Wilson at receiver. I think he would complement Garrett well. Tyson is 6'2", 195 pounds. A big receiver that, I think is just very different from what Garrett Wilson does. And that's the route that I would go. Now, if Reese is available for you, you just want to take this unicorn style defensive player where you could play him at linebacker, you play him at edge, you do all these things with him. I would understand that, especially for, a defensive minded coach, but my focus is on making life as easy for your young quarterback as possible. And if that means in 2027, you're drafting a quarterback and they're coming in with, let's say, Garrett into a wide receiver room with Garrett Wilson, Jordan Tyson, A.D. Mitchell, John Mechie, Mason Taylor, Breece Hall, plus, then I feel pretty good about his chances. So that'd be my stance on it. Let's go to Peter from up in the beautiful Hudson Valley.
Hey, Matt. Hey, it's Peter calling from the beautiful Hudson Valley on this late Sunday evening. Almost forgot that I should call in after the Jets lost to the Ravens earlier. I guess I might owe you and my brother and my nephew and a few other Jets fans an apology. An off kind of way. I was out working during the first half of the game when the Jets defense was holding things down, and they had a 7-3 halftime lead, and then I came home.
Oh, no, Peter, come on.
The second half debacle. Penalties and the turnover from Breece and not great play. I thought they were going to keep it somewhat decent. I think I predicted a 34-13 score. 23-10 wasn't terrible, but still, a loss is a loss, and it's the Ravens, who are on quite a hot streak.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry about that on your wedding weekend. I got to see some of the photos. Great stuff. And congratulations again to you and Taylor. Hoping for, obviously, many great years together with you guys and maybe some future O'Learys down the road. Anyway, back to the game. Some things that I did see, I did go back and watch the first half highlights, which really wasn't much, and of course, seeing the second half. Just wanted to point out, it was nice to see some of the guys in the secondary, especially Brownlee on that goal line stand, get in there and mix it up with Henry, and as well as
good call.
Malachi Moore and even Tony Adams, didn't shy away from trying to make tackles, which is a good thing. Obviously some good plays, from Mechie and Mitchell, making their, more of a contribution to the offense. Hopefully the main thing with Breece is that he can stop making these fumbles. That would really be nice. And maybe that'll get him a contract to stay with this team going forward. So do you think we can overcome that with Breece? That's kind of my question for this week. And as a reason to want to retain him, because the fumbles really are kind of a problem. And that might be holding the Jets back from trying to re-sign him. Anyway, let's see what happens next week. And as always, go Jets.
Yeah, thank you for the call, Peter. I think you bring up a lot of really good points there in the second half of that call, especially, right? Like talking through some of these guys that, held their own. And look, against the Ravens, expectations were really low. And it was like one of the previous calls where you're saying like no moral victories, which is true. But this, with where they are right now, it's really not as much about the wins and losses as it is about figuring out who are your pieces. And I think you saw some nice things with Briggs. I think Brownlee had a bounce back game. I think AZ Thomas actually played okay in this game. It wasn't horrible, right? Like this is a game where I thought they'd give up 30 plus points. And I know Baltimore's offense isn't humming like it usually is. But, they've just rattled off 5 straight wins. They're sitting at 6-5 after a 1-5 start. They're a team that's always good, always in the mix. And it was a road game. You were 13.5-point underdogs on the road. You lost by 13, but you hung tough with them for a while. And, I don't mind some of the decisions that they made in this game. And I think, Peter definitely went through it and called out some key contributors for the Jets. And that's what these final 6 games are for you. Figure out who your key contributors are. Let's close the show with PG from Long Island.
Hello, Matt O'Leary. PG from Long Island here. Thank you for taking the call. First of all, congratulations on your 300th episode
Thank you.
week. And more important, congratulations on your wedding this past weekend. I understand everything went very well. So
Thank you.
God bless you and your wife. I hope you have a long, prosperous life together. And I hope that someday you are together able to watch the Jets win a Super Bowl.
Amen.
A couple things. One, Darren Muji, shout out to him. I think he's done a great job this year in a small sample size between the trades and the draft. Listen, I was a big, Douglas fan, but maybe I just like general managers, but seriously, he has done a very good job. I disagree with your take on the fourth down call with Aaron Glenn, 4th and 2 from the 42, the Jets own 42. And listen, the analytics, bear it out, says it's the right call probably, but you have to have a little feel for the game. And the Jets defense have just given up a 75-yard, 11-play touchdown drive. And, you have the best player on the Jets is arguably their punter. So let the punter do his job, use the tools that you have, and pin them down there. It was only 10-7 at that point. So Jets are still in the game. I'm not saying it's an egregious call. Like I said, you could certainly argue for it. I just think it was a mistake at that time of the game, the way the game was going. Speaking of the defense, I've heard a bunch of people say defense played really well. Well, the defense played really well in the first half. In the second half, not so much. They gave up, they Ravens touched the ball 4 times, and they gave up 4 scores, 2 touchdowns and 2 field goals. So, I mean, it was 20-3. They got outscored in the second half, so I don't know how you can say the defense played well. My question to you, Matt, is we're talking about this being an evaluation year. What do you think big differences the Jets going to look like next year? What players that are starters now are not going to be starters or not even on the team? And what coaches, including the coordinators, are not going to be here next year? If the season ended today and you had to kind of evaluate that, I know it's early, but just your opinion on where we are so far. As always, Matt, go Jets.
Yeah, thank you so much for the call, PG. And I think, you know what, I understand where you're coming from on the fourth down. I do. I don't, and I've said my piece on it already too. Like I don't understand, or I don't mind, the aggressiveness, but I'm never like, you always go 1,000% with the analytics, no matter what. You bring up a good point, and you do have to have a feel for the game. And I think how the defense played on the previous drive could play a factor in those decisions. And McNamara, is really good at pitting teams inside the 20. So maybe things are different. My only pushback on it that I'll give you, and it's something that I said too, I think if you're play to win, don't play not to lose. And that's really the only other additional thing that I have on that. For who are some guys who might not be here next year or could be starters? We talked about the wide receivers a lot. I think Mechie and Mitchell will be role players on this team. I don't think they're going to be number 2 receivers, which right now they're number 1 and number 2 receivers for you because of injuries. But I think they absolutely can be a number 3 and 4 option for you. I don't think Quincy Williams is going to be back. I think he leaves in free agency. I think the Jets have to strongly consider just eating it with Jamie and Sherwood and just maybe completely redo that linebacker room. They're going to have to find another safety. I think Malachi Moore is going to get an opportunity to start next year, but they need to find a running mate for him. It's not going to be Andre Cisco, and it's not going to be Tony Adams. I think Brownlee will be a starting inside corner. I think, honestly, Brownlee in the slot with A.Z. Thomas and Brandon Stevens as your outside corners is a pretty safe bet for what that's going to be. I think Briggs and Phillips will be rotational interior guys. I think they add another either veteran. It could be a veteran or someone in the draft to pair with one of those guys, right? Like Phillips probably technically your starter, but Briggs will play a good amount of reps. I'm trying to think who Justin Fields, I think, is going to be a post June 1 cut. I don't think Tyrod Taylor comes back. I think there's a good chance he could retire at the end of the year. I think Breece Hall comes back, and they're good with Breece Hall, Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. I think Jeremy Ruckert comes back, and they add another tight end. McNamara will be back, and I'm like 50-50 on Nick Folk. I think he's been great. Like, I'm not saying like you don't bring him back, obviously, but I'm 50-50 on him because of his age, right? Like, I just think there's a world where, you know, maybe he's done after this year. So I think it's a coin flip there. But hopefully that's enough guys who are on the fringe or up in the air, and guys who are playing right now that maybe won't be playing. Michael Clemens, I don't think will be back. I don't see them re-signing Michael Clemens. There's another one for you. But there you go. Thanks everyone for tuning in for another episode of Just Jets. I'm Matt O'Leary, and I'll catch you guys next time.